Hey guys, welcome back to Purelywalking. It's me, Ellie, again, and today we're going to be walking through the most popular American franchises that have come to Dominican Republic but have tragically failed in our market. So these are extremely internationally popular franchises from the Americans that have come to establish themselves here in DR, but for some sometimes quirky and sometimes just dumb reasons leave our country, and we're going to be talking about those reasons. Obviously, some of these are alleged and some of these are just my own take on the problem that they had. So we're going to be talking about those, and I want you to comment down below if you agree with my assessment of the situation or if you have another theory on why these franchises failed. So let's go and meet the franchises that have left Dominican Republic. First franchise we're going to be talking about is a very well known, and it is none other than Dunkin Donuts. Dunkin Donuts was one of the first franchises that was settled here in the Dominican Republic back in the 90s. They came with a great idea. They opened their shop, to sell donuts and coffee and things like that. But then they had an even bigger idea to go on and be a 24-hour service shop. So they sold donuts and coffee and all those things for 24 hours in a day. So basically the shop didn't close. What happened with that was that a lot of university students, when they were in finals weeks or when they were studying for tests, where they were just trying to study together overnight or whatever, they would go to Dunkin Donuts. But over time, the cost to have a shop open overnight was too expensive, and so the franchise slowly started to fail and left Dominican markets. Another franchise that opened up here and tragically failed was IHOP. And the reason why IHOP failed in the DR is a lot different than that of Dunkin Donuts. IHOP established itself here in Sambil, great plaza for business and for eating. But the thing was, first of all, you couldn't even know where the entrance was. So IHOP, you saw the sign from out at Avenida Kennedy, so that's a good thing. But when you got actually into the plaza itself, you couldn't even find IHOP. You had to go through weird passageways to actually find the first entrance of the IHOP restaurant. Second of all, when you got your order and you paid for it, you realized that just for a few little pancakes, you paid for what a normal fillet of meat would cost you. So it was a little bit on the expensive side for some people, and obviously Dominicans weren't too accustomed to having pancakes for breakfast anyways. It was like the newer generations that was accustomed to that. So basically that's why IHOP started failing. First, it was a little bit expensive, and second of all, people were like,
I prefer my mango over these pancakes, you know what I'm saying?
So tragically, IHOP left the country. The next two franchises that I'm going to be talking about are the ones that I believe the reasons why they left the Dominican Republic are a little bit dumb. Not that the investors are dumb, but you're going to get what I mean when I talk to you about these. The first one is dear old Johnny Rockets. When Johnny Rockets came to the country in the 2010s era, I was shocked and super excited to try their lovely hamburgers and their awesome shakes. But when I got to the actual establishment, I realized that the quality of the hamburgers in Johnny Rockets wasn't all that. I mean, it wasn't what I remembered when I tried Johnny Rockets back in the States, at least. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that Johnny Rockets established itself in prime real estate here in the DR in Santo Domingo, and they had a huge restaurant in Avenida Abraham Lincoln, which is one of the main avenidas here in Santo Domingo. So even though they had a really cool prime real estate and they were located really well, I believe the actual restaurant that they got, the establishment, was way too much for them. They couldn't establish themselves in a little plaza or in a mall somewhere. They had to have this huge standalone restaurant, and I believe that was a sunken investment for them. Also in that same boat was Denny's. Denny's was delicious. Denny's came also in the 2010s era here into a Dominican market, but they first had established themselves in the actual airport. So they were in Las Americas airport here in Santo Domingo. I'm crossing the street, by the way. So I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to stop talking now so I can cross the street. If they let me. Oh, here's my chance. All right, so I was talking about Denny's. Denny's had established themselves, first of all, in the airport, and they tested out the market. Everything was wonderful because their food was actually pretty delicious. Then they decided to locate themselves outside the airport. Well, what did they do? They built a 3-story high building for the restaurant. What? I mean, it was overkill. You know what I mean? Like, Denny's could have perfectly be situated in a little plaza in even colonial zone somewhere. They had pretty cool service and the food was delicious. But I mean, I think the investment of the 3-story building with 3 floors down for parking spaces, it was too much of an investment to recuperate that cost. I believe it was a massive feat. So even though Denny's had a really cool and a really good vibe, I went there a lot. I even spent New Year's Eve there once. It was pretty cool, pretty amazing. But unfortunately, I believe the investment that the investors had made in the first place for that big building was a little bit too much for them, and they sadly had to leave the country. I believe it was around 2019 when they left town. So I believe that can give us a lesson of don't get too much restaurant. Just get a little corner in a little plaza, test out the market, and start growing slowly from there. By the way, can we have a moment of silence here for how pretty that the colonial zone is today? Yes. The next franchise that came and failed in the Dominican market is Hooters. You know Hooters, that restaurant that all men love to go to because the servers and the waiters were all women that had beautiful bodies and had very little clothing on. Yeah, that's the one. Hooters was known over here for pretty good chicken wings, but what sells here are the places that you can go with anyone at all and not have to worry or blush at what the waiter is wearing, if you know what I mean. So Hooters started strong, but it slowly lost its shine and its luster over here because people were just looking for a better ambiance. That sports bar themed type of place where people went to watch the games wasn't really the Hooters. Over here, where Dominicans love to watch games, is like in your local colmado. So Hooters wasn't actually the it place. Another franchise that loved and lost here in the country is good old Quiznos. I truly loved Quiznos fries and I went there plenty of times. They had a standalone restaurant back in Avenida Abraham Lincoln, I believe, and it was delicious and it was always packed with people. But slowly but surely, Quiznos' quality of, those sandwiches that they made was losing a little bit of shine over the years. And eventually the place that Quiznos was in Lincoln Avenue was demoted down to just a local place at a local mall. So they had a little kiosk at a mall, and that's where they were established themselves for a little bit. But still, Dominicans, even though the fries were still delicious, the sandwiches, we were not very much convinced that Quiznos was the it thing to be paying prime money, like huge amounts of money for these sandwiches. So eventually Quiznos, unfortunately, hit the downside, hit the red numbers, and they left the Dominican Republic. And a funny story about Quiznos is the fact that it was one of the first franchises here to put the refills for free. So you got your little cup of soda and you could refill it anytime you want, as much as you wanted. So Dominicans were like, oh my god. So they destroyed that free refill thing to its max. I'm not sure if the investment that the company was making in soda was enough to, cover for what the people were paying. So that's another element that Quiznos had going on. The free refills thing wasn't really working because people abused that thing, all right? Well, guys, those were just a few of the most popular franchises that have come to Dominican markets and have tragically failed for some reason or another. Let me know if you agree with my assessment on the situation, or if you think there were other reasons behind the scenes that caused these popular franchises to leave the DR. Actually, there is a really cool rumor that Dunkin Donuts might be coming back to give competition to good old Krispy Kreme, so we'll see how that plays out and I'll keep you updated. But for now, let me know if you would add any other to this list. I know there are a few others that I have not mentioned. Well, I'll leave that for a part 2 maybe. Vote in the comments. And for now, I'm going to be signing out and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.